Katherine Uppitysocks, and I will be telling you about my experience of the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, the Tea Act, and the Boston Tea Party. And I'll be just explaining all those ones. So let's get started. In 1765, the Parliament passed the Stamp Act. I thought it was a good thing because since my husband is the governor and all, we get some of the money from the taxes they pay. And now we can know if those people who send out newspapers or import goods are paying their taxes by the stamps. But apparently the colony people did not think it was a good idea because they had a protest the same year, which I thought was ridiculous. They should have to pay taxes on stuff, seriously. I don't think it matters if we're consented by the Parliament or not. My friend Charlotte Lettercash from the colonies feels a little bit different because apparently she had to pay more taxes and her husband had to pay more taxes on his merchandise store. And something along the lines of blah 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 wasn't fair, yada yada. But she thought the protest was a good thing because later on she can get people to get her smuggled goods again. I do not agree with her, though. She's a colonist. I'm a British. Next, I'll talk about the Townshend Acts, which was in about 1767. But the Townshend Acts was made for the British soldiers and troops that were mainly in New York. New York's assembly refused to pay to house the troops, but Charles, the king's finance minister, and one of my husband's close friends explained to the Parliament that he had a plan to raise revenue in the colonies. The Parliament agreed to do what is the Townshend Acts. Now you see, I thought this was a splendid idea because it gave our troops some housing. The other acts imported taxes, placed duties, and more. The money from the taxing would go to the salaries of my husband and his men, which really was truly a fair share for everyone. Well, that's just what some people thought. Okay, that's what I thought, but it was still very beneficial for some people. But as time went on, the people of New York were a little ticked off because of the new taxes. So, of course, the Townshend Acts were being protested, and it really was just one big glob of disagreements between the colonies and the British. But my friend Charlotte Lettercash felt that somewhat totally different from what I think. She disagreed with the Townshend Acts because they had to pay more taxes. But she had thought that the protest was good because the merchants were boycotting goods and would have to go to her. And finally, I will talk about the Tea Act and the Boston Tea Party in 1773. You see, what happened was all the acts from the Townshend Acts were done except the tax on tea. Anyways, in a nutshell, a whole bunch of people and communities in various towns were coming to get the smuggled tea. But then the smuggled tea was also getting taxed, which brings me to part 2. The colonies were furious because the British had taxation without representation and wanted to prove this to the British, that they felt very strong about this and do not deserve to pay taxes on these sort of things. So they proved themselves by dressing up or disguising themselves as natives and docked in the Boston harbor and made their minds by destroying and dunking hundreds of chests full of tea. Tension rose, and although the colonists offered to pay for the damaged tea, the British declined and wanted the men up to this all to go to trial. And that's what I think truly arose everything, even more. My friend Charlotte Lettercash felt though mad because at the beginning of the Tea Acts, everyone was just buying from the stores and everything, and they weren't buying her smuggled goods because they were selling it in stores. But it was also good because her husband was a merchandise owner, so he had a store for merchandise. But she was proud of all the Boston Tea Party because although it might have made things a lot worse with everything, they still stuck to the no taxation without representation, and she thought it was really good. But I disagree with her entirely, but I guess that's just my opinion. Because I'm British and she's a colonist, so we think differently, I guess. But, thanks. That's all I have to say about my experience of the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, the Tea Act, and Boston Tea Party. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye. Thanks for listening.